Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the April Reads. Again, sorry that this is so late in the month of May. That's just kind of how my recording schedule goes. Anyway, you'll notice a couple of things on here. First of all, my story graph does say I only read 9 books. That's incorrect. Um, and I technically read 11 books. You'll see 10 books. And as you know, that's because I'm reading a series and I'll be going over that series when it happens. Anyways, one thing I am doing more recently is I'm trying to read at least one book of the month book every month. Um, one, because I have a book of the month membership, but also because I want to kind of uh, see if what they are selling is kind of like good. Yeah. So, first book is book of the month book. It is Count My Lies. Now, this is a very fun book. I will say that it got a little bit slow in the middle. So it follows a woman named Salone who basically lies about everything in her life. Um, she meets a woman named Violet who is very rich, lives in New York City. And basically, immediately, she lies to Violet about who she is, what she does, and she becomes the nanny of Violet's child. However, Violet has ulterior motives. Very good book. I love the ending. Very good twist. Um, I will say it does switch to Violet's point of view. That part gets a little bit slow. Um, Sometimes the author reveals things very slowly, and I just wish it was like a tiny bit faster. Um, the boyfriend is also a 4. I will say though, it's like a lower 4 than Count My Lies. So the boyfriend is a Frida McFadden book. If you know me, you know I love Frida. I think she's really cool. However, I have noticed that she usually has it where the man is the problem. Um, this one, I don't know. Um, Long story short, it follows a woman, and she is in New York City as well. She wants to basically have this boyfriend, but she's being like followed by this one guy. And then her best friend, she ends up dying and is like brutally murdered. And so she is so worried yeah, and then she meets this other guy, and then she finds out little things about him that is very red flag. And honestly, this girl, I mean, like, she used to date a cop, and I'm like, girly, how do you not notice these red flags? Anyways, so there you go. A werewolf's guide to seducing a vampire. So this one is a trilogy. I believe it's about to be, actually, there's about to be a fourth book, but this one is a third book. Um, the other ones are fake dating, a demon, a witch's guide to fake dating demon, and a demon's guide to seducing a witch, I want to say. So this one is when they finally kind of break off from that like witch and demon thing. um the world building of this series is so cool. Long story short, just a bunch of magical creatures live in this town. It's a very cool thing. So the werewolf, he is like, he owns a nursery, like a plant nursery. And he is just super sad, and he accidentally buys a succubus vampire, and it's really funny. um Really cute chemistry in this book. I will say the building in general, I would say, is why you should read the entire 3 books. Um, yeah, I think that this fantasy is really cool. Um, you will also notice I'm trying to finish a lot of series right now, so that's why you'll probably see me like talking about other books while during this one. Burning Crowns is actually the third in the series of the Twin Crowns. This is about 2 sisters. They're twins, separated at birth. Very cool storytelling. I think the second one was not as good as the first one, but the third one does kind of bring it all back together. So it's between Rose and Ren. Ren is the sister who was like brought up to be more of a witch, while Rose was more to be a princess, and then they kind of switched. This book is very cool. It's about how they break their curse. Um, I think that Ren is finally redeemed in this book. I really don't like her in the first two books. I think that she's really selfish and she's really rude to Rose, especially, and Rose just loves her. I do really like the ending for Rose. I think that she gets everything she deserves. And I think that it's a great book to end the series. Overall, the series is really good. So if you want to read the Twin Crown series, I highly suggest it. Okay, so Starling House is the second book I read by Alex Harrow. Um, the first book I read was To Once and Future Witches. That book I highly recommend if you ever want to read a book that has really good storytelling as well as like the lore of like the maid and the crone and the mother. That is a great book. Starling House, not my favorite book from her. Um, so this book is about a woman who basically like always is interested in this haunted house called Starling House. Um, she eventually meets the caretaker of this house and she finds out that the house is alive basically, and people are basically trying to get into the house, learn about its lore, from the government, and it's a very cool book. It's cool to talk about like a person who is poor, who grows up without having anything, and how she struggles to help her brother. um, I think that it's really repetitive. It talks a lot about her trauma and how she lost her mom. And honestly, it talks maybe too much about that. So I think it's a good book. It's just not my favorite. So The Butcher Game is a second book to the Butcher and the Wren series. Butcher and the Wren is very good. So here's the deal. It it is a Alana Urquhart book. If you don't know, she is the person who co-hosts Morbid Podcasts. So if you like Morbid Podcasts, you should read this series. So The Butcher Game is basically the sequel to The Butcher and the Wren. So Wren is still following after Jeremy, and Jeremy is still killing a bunch of people. It's very morbid at times. So if you don't want to like read books that deal with murder or people killing people or like getting into that mind space, don't do that. Don't read this book. That's my warning. I will say it's a very cool ending and it sets itself really nicely for the next book. I do think that this will be a good trilogy if she wraps it up really nicely. I do prefer the first book over the second book, just very slightly though. I think that the second book is a very good continuation. If you don't know me, I don't tend to like the second books more, just to be quite honest with you. So, here we have again a second book of a series. So this is the Thunderhead. It is the Scythe series. So if you don't know about this one, so the Scythe series is basically about a dystopian question mark future. Um, so I say question mark because to some degree this is a utopia. Nobody dies unless they are basically murdered by scythes, and scythes should be able to like hand select. The problem is in this book, the scythes are not doing their job. They're not hand selecting well, right? Um, so in this book, it follows the same two people from the previous one. It's Scythe Anastasia and Scythe Lucifer. So Lucifer is trying to kill the scythes that are not doing their job. Scythe Anastasia is trying to be a good power head. Very good cliffhanger at the end. A lot of people die. A lot of scythes die at the end of this, which leaves just a really bad um, opening for some people to take power who shouldn't take power. So I will say I am excited to read the third book because it seems really good in comparison. I will say, though, that I don't necessarily love this book. I think it went into the unnecessaries a little bit too well. They're basically, or not unnecessary, I don't remember the word, but the people, unsavories. Um, unsavories are people who basically are on the outskirts. So I will say it ended very well with including the unsavories and why we needed to know about that part. So yeah, if you're interested, I think it's cool. So Thistlefoot, I think, had very cool concepts, but it was not executed well. So the concept is that it follows Baba Yaga's great great grandchildren, and they receive the house that moves, right? And they are basically puppet theater people, and the girl basically is able to have some of Baba Yaga's powers. I think it's cool. I think that it talks a lot about generational trauma, but I don't know if it necessarily was executed well. It switches a lot. It was hard to follow, and it was just not my thing. So again, not my thing. The Color Purple was something I have been wanting to listen to. Actually, read this one I read in a print for a really long time. This I had no idea that it was so gay. Cecile is actually a very gay woman, but she has been R-word multiple times by somebody who she thought was her dad, but was actually her stepdad. So that's something. And then she falls in love with a woman, and they like she the woman doesn't really take her feelings into account a lot, and it's a beautiful story. um Her children from her stepdad are actually taking care of a different family, which her sister then writes to her about. The sisters don't see each other until the end of the book. Nettie is the sister. Nettie's story is not my favorite. I think that if it was mostly Cecile's story, I would have rated this higher. But Nettie's story, I wasn't into. It does go into what it was like in Africa and what it was like to be a Black person visiting Africa and what they thought. But not my favorite. This is a book I read with my daughter. This is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Meltdown. Um, it's fine. I don't like Greg, but it was mostly not about Greg this time. So it was okay. I don't know. The story was kind of boring, to be quite honest with you. All right. So here's my stats at the end of my storybook here. Um, Looks like it took me a little longer to get through pages. However, I read thicker books this time, or longer books. You'll see my May reads. I'm starting it, which will be a thick book. So let me know what you think. Let me know any books I should read, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.